Breaking. Charles abdicates. William is new king. Harry and Andrew removed from line of succession. What if King Charles couldn't work? Hello, before we continue, please subscribe to the channel for more news about the British royal family. To promote transparency, Buckingham Palace announced Monday that King Charles II has been diagnosed with a type of cancer and is temporarily stepping back from public duties. Although officials declined to provide details, they said the king was completely positive about his treatment and that it was being carried out. Aside from a few details, it's not surprising that the company has remained silent. The king's sister, Princess Anne, ignored reporters' questions about the king's health during a visit to a community center on Tuesday. His eldest son, Prince William, thanked the audience for their kind words of support in a speech at a fundraiser on Wednesday. The king personally apologized to the people of Grenada for missing the 50th anniversary of independence and nothing else. A palace statement said the king decided to reveal his diagnosis partly to prevent speculation and for the lack of details, leaving some asking. Mainly, what would happen if Charles was too sick to do the job? Here's what's been reported about the situation and what it means for the monarchy going forward. Now, what type of cancer does Charles even have? Well, according to Buckingham Palace, it's not the prostate. This is the only specific information released about a king's diagnosis. In its initial statement, the palace explained that when Charles was admitted to the hospital in January with an extensive prostate exam for what was ultimately a benign disease, revealed a form of cancer at one site. Spot unknown. How progressive is it? This is also not clear. Immediately after hearing the news, Prince Harry, Charles' youngest son, boarded a plane to see his father, letting some know that the situation could be serious even though he returned to California within 24 hours. No surprise there. At the same time, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the cancer was detected at an early stage, a conclusion he appears to have drawn from a palace memo, praising the royal medicine team for their swift intervention during his treatment. He will continue to handle government business and official documents as usual. According to a statement by University College London, this means he will carry out his constitutional duties as king, ratifying royal legislation, hosting senior officials, and checking red boxes, but will limit public appearances for now. For example, on Wednesday, he has his weekly meeting with Sunak, but prefers phone calls face-to-face. All of this indicates that, for now at least, the king will more or less continue business as usual, just with fewer ribbon cuttings and assuming what happens if the king can't become king at the same time. Cancer is a disease with very different effects, and it's unclear how the king's case will progress. However, if the person is incapacitated, there will be measures in place to ensure that the base of the crown is covered in treatment, and if that treatment leaves the person temporarily unable to work, pre-selected government advisors intervene under the Regency Act of 1937. However, counselors of state are appointed by Queen Camilla, Prince William, Princess Anne, and Prince Edward. Responsibility usually falls to the royal spouse and the next 4 people in line to the throne, as long as they are 21 years old. That's the caveat. Technically, this includes the king's youngest son, Prince Harry, and his older brother, Prince Andrew, but neither of the royals work anymore. Harry because he turned down the role to move to America, and Andrew because his mother stripped him of his title for accusing him of rape and child molestation. In December of 2022, Charles agreed to a bill adding younger sisters and brothers to the list to avoid possible difficult situations if he decided to mobilize them, and that seems unlikely at this very moment. The advisors would take care of most of the king's daily duties, signing documents, holding meetings, and receiving ambassadorial credentials. He said that in general, day-to-day matters, more important tasks such as dissolving parliament, appointing a prime minister, establishing an aristocracy, and serving as head of the republic were not discussed. This is a temporary absence report, in which case the king becomes incapacitated, ill enough to be unable to perform his duties as king. A more permanent solution would be possible, as Regent William would assume his father's functions. As for the matter of incapacity, that'll be decided by Camilla, after consulting with a number of high lords and members of parliament, after consulting with the royal physicians. However, I do want to emphasize that there is no information to suggest that this is a real possibility. What happens in the event of an exemption? This makes the hypothetical question of a possible abdication of power even more speculative. In general, the king has the right to resign from his grandfather, Edward VIII, who abdicated the throne in 1936 to marry his divorced girlfriend, Nazi sympathizer Wallis Simpson. Nearly more recently, with even greater success in the eyes of the public, the second Queen Margaret of Denmark advocated in favor of her son, Crown Prince Frederik, ostensibly because the time had come, but perhaps also to prevent a blockage. If some rumors in Denmark are to be believed, they are about royal romances. While Margaret's abdication was successful, Edward's was not, and that was really the only reason for the Regency Act when Charles' grandfather suddenly became king. 10-year-old Elizabeth suddenly became queen after that, inheriting the throne, inheriting a legacy of scandals and turmoils in the family. And in fact, as Political notes, Charles recently resigned to take the job. He waited decades for the remaining time. What do we know about Big Willie? At first, only his wife, Duchess Catherine, a member of the royal family, formerly known as Kate Middleton, who was also recovering from surgery, called him, and that only to her friends. That was Prince William, or rather the Princess of Wales as well. If you want to be formal, the Duke of Rothesay, if you're in Scotland. After all, William is 41 years old, and he has 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, and an older brother, rather a younger brother, Prince Harry. The sexiest in the world, supposedly, as a poll called him. He likes sports, especially tennis. He could have bombed Wimbledon and football. He's a president. He may not be able to write, but he can cook pasta, supposedly. According to the royal website, he's passionate about a number of issues: the environment, fighting infertility, mental health, and the military. Of course, real royals will remember that the latter two were also close to Harry, but despite the obvious differences between the two brothers, they appear to be having many interests in common. In his excellent memoir, Harry sparely recalls William being furious about who would win, or rather own, Africa, like all the rhinos and elephants on the continent. And yes, William has repeatedly demonstrated his ability to intervene in matters such as asserting that the royal family is not a racist family at all. After an emotional interview with child bride, Oprah Winfrey often made people suspect that it was a historic declaration of war in Ukraine. But what elephants were to William, to Charles they were all plants. Since 2014, his charity, United for Wildlife, has worked to stop poaching and the illegal trade of animal products. That same year, he apparently told Jane Goodall that he wanted to see all of Buckingham Palace's ivory furniture destroyed. Perhaps this is what he meant when he said he planned to become a modern king.